Okay.
So ours is still a harm reduction focused policy that names one of the harms as the criminalization of drugs.
Right.
So we don't talk about sober or recovery or anything like that.
The province of Ontario's abandonment of certain aspects of the harm reduction approach to addiction and adoption of a more treatment and recovery focus has had a tough time being implemented in some of our more major cities. Here, Ward 4 Councillor Susan Stevenson shares about the difficulties London has been experiencing moving away from the harm reduction strategy. As well, we discuss the current issues our homeless community members are having getting into recovery. Have a listen.
Well, thank you for foreshadowing once again. So one thing that here at the Annex and the Grace Cafe is of great concern to us, especially to Don and I, is the whole question of pretreatment, which is sober living spaces in between that time when somebody says, I've got a problem,
Yeah.
and they're actually able to make it into a rehab. And obviously we need more rehab spaces. Folks are doing some great work, but there's just not enough of them. But that time in between I have a problem and I get in is really, really delicate.
Yeah.
If you send someone back to a place that they're already using and say, that's great, we'll get you in a month, none of us would survive that.
Yeah. No.
So is there any stomach whatsoever for some type of sober living environment to transition people from drug use into sobriety?
So this is another thing that I'm going to be bringing forward to council at some point in the next little while, is changing the focus of our whole of community system response,
Okay.
which council endorsed in 2023, a
Mhm.
year before the province decided to go in the recovery-oriented system of care route.
Right.
But we haven't aligned with the province.
Okay.
So ours is still a harm reduction focused policy that names one of the harms as the criminalization of drugs.
Right.
So we don't talk about sober or recovery or anything like that. There isn't even encouragement
Right.
into recovery because that's stigmatizing.
Right.
So it's very much a focus on making sure there's no stigmatizing of drug use. And so, I mean, I don't want to stigmatize people,
Right.
right? I don't want any stigma around addiction.
Right.
But the fact that we don't stigmatize openly using drugs, I think is taking it too far. And it limits our conversations around, if we were focused on recovery, we could talk about these pathways.
Right.
Do we have these pre-treatment spaces, which I would love to have, right? Because it supports people in their choice until, like you said, a space opens up.
Yeah.
Do we have pathways after?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm hearing we've got all kinds of gaps that people are brave enough to go into detox and they come out and they're told, well, you're back on the street again or back in the shelters until a space opens up.
Right.
And when the spaces open up, they're not recovery focused.
Right.
So again, they're amidst this open drug use, and it concerns me because if we're looking at long-term solutions, we want to, in my opinion, support people in these pathways out of the trap of addiction.
Right.
Right. So make sure that, we know that people have trouble and they might fall or relapse, but I want it to not be our fault that we didn't have a solid pathway for them to walk.
Right.
The journey's tough enough.
Yep.
Let's at least have a solid pathway that allows for them to relapse, that provides that safety to get back on track again. We had the Recovery Community Center at Salvation Army.
Right.
We didn't fund it
Right.
through tax dollars.
Right.
But I really liked the sounds of that program.
Right.
It had, I think, 40 beds where people they had that stability of living for
Right.
4 years.
Yes.
So the only requirement was that they come out of detox and that they do 3 things a day that move them forward. How they do that was up to them. If they needed to go back to detox, they could do so. If they went to rehab for 30 days, they knew they had that space
Right.
to come back to.
Yes.
And my understanding is that's been converted to the Heart Hub now.
Okay.
So we're still going to have something like that.
Right.
Again, probably at a much greater cost.
Right.
hopefully a better service. I'm not
Mhm.
exactly sure how that works. I know they're going to have NA and AA within walking distance.
Sure.
I think that'll be great.
Yeah.
Again, the concern always was with that recovery community center was that it was in an institution that was rampant with drug use around it.
Right.
But it seemed to work, right?
Right.
There were people who were able to walk that path, use that resource, and find their way into recovery. There's been a few speakers at the Addiction Recovery Breakfast who've come out of that program and spoken about it.
Yeah.
I know Michelle said, I think she went to detox 25 times or something like
Wow.
that. I thought, what a warrior.
No doubt.
And at the same time, I wonder if there'd been a different, more supportive environment, could that maybe have been cut back to 12, or
Right.
how many people do we maybe lose in that process?